Hello and welcome to this tutorial on securing HL7 messages with SSL. Before we start, I just need to clarify one thing. SSL is a deprecated format that has been replaced by TLS. However, the term SSL is still in common use when referring to transport layer security, and so I have used this term throughout the video. Be assured that HL7 Soup uses TLS 1.2 only and will never utilize the now vulnerable SSL protocol. So why do we need to use SSL? Well, when data, such as HL7, is sent between computers, it doesn't always go direct. It gets bounced around a bit, particularly when it goes out onto the internet. Because you're sending sensitive medical data, you don't want this to fall into the wrong hands. SSL fixes this problem by encrypting the message so that only the sender and the receiver can access it. So to anyone in between, it looks like garbage. It's all done with clever mathematics with very large numbers that store a secret key in a file called a certificate. The receiving computer needs to be configured with a certificate, and the address needs to be changed from HTTP to HTTPS, but once you're done, your data is protected. So how do you get a certificate file? Well, you've two options. You can create your own. It's pretty easy to do so, and I'll show you a simple way later in this video. Alternatively, you can buy one. So why would you buy one when you can make your own easily for free? Well, it's all about trust. When you buy a certificate, the vendor checks to make sure that you're you. The vendors have already been trusted by Microsoft, so when they state they trust you, all Windows computers will trust you too. This means your certificate will work everywhere. However, when you make your own certificate, nobody trusts it but you, so it just doesn't work. Fortunately, when creating a software integration between systems, both sides have already partnered up and are happy to trust each other anyway. This means that the sender can just state they trust your homemade certificate and you're back in business. For this reason, I'll be demonstrating how to create a homemade certificate first. You can create a certificate in the command prompt with the make cert command. I'll leave a link in the comments for those that like punishment, but let me show you the easy way. Start by loading up IIS Manager on your receiving computer. If you don't have it, just do a quick Google for how to enable IIS Manager for your version of Windows. It's part of Windows, so don't worry, you're not going to be installing stuff from the web. Now double click on Server Certificates. Then in the upper right hand options, click Create Self-Signed Certificate. Give your certificate a friendly name, select Personal, and then click OK. Your certificate has been created. It's shown here in IIS, but also in your Computer Certificates Manager. Just expand Personal Certificates, and there it is with the friendly name that you typed. If you'd purchased a certificate from a certificate authority, they would have given you a PFX file. Let me export my created one as an example. Right-click, All Tasks, and Export. I'll include the private key and take the defaults and give it a password. Now I just need to put it somewhere. That's it, I can delete this one now. Now that I have a PFX file, just double click to import it. Select local machine, put in the password, allow it to import into the personal folder, and it's done. Now when I refresh, my certificate is available again. As you can see, it's pretty easy to get a certificate installed, regardless of whether it was created by yourself or a certificate authority. So now that we have a certificate installed, let's use it in HL7 Soup and create a new HTTP receiver. Start by loading HL7 Soup and create a new receiver workflow. I'm going to change this to an HTTP receiver and call it Receive HL7 over SSL. Now I just need to give it an unused port number and select that I'm using SSL. I'll also quickly register this address so HL7 Soup has access to this port without me needing to run as an administrator. Now to the SSL settings themselves. Firstly, I need to locate my certificate, and that can be done by either pointing at the file or by locating it in the Certificate Manager. The File Manager is pretty self-explanatory, so I'm going to show you how to use the certificate stored in the manager. We stored the certificate in the personal store, so the default folder is correct, but now we need to find the thumbprint. Back in Certificate Manager, we just double click on our certificate, go to the Details tab, locate the thumbprint. I'll copy this to my clipboard, head back to HL7 Soup and paste it in. Now I just need my password. When I exported the certificate earlier, I added a password to it. So now I have to enter it. If I hadn't added the password, then I would have left this blank. Now all that remains is to bind the certificate to the port. That's it. SSL is configured. Now I can copy this HTTPS address and pass it on to the sender. Before I do though, let me quickly complete the workflow. I'm simply going to make it write out the received HL7 message to disk. Great, so let's save this workflow and start it running. We can now test this out by pasting the URL into my browser and hitting enter. Great, an HL7 response. We didn't actually send an HL7 message, hence the error message, but it shows we did connect. So what happens now if I head over to another computer and attempt to browse this address? Well, the first thing is it will probably time out and tell you the site can't be reached because you've forgotten to allow HL7 Soup through the firewall. I'll configure this properly later, but for testing purposes, I'm going to turn off my firewall. So now when I refresh, I get this nasty looking warning. That's because I have a self-signed certificate. If I used a certificate I got from a certificate authority, everything would be working now. But that's okay, I'm just going to expand the advanced options and click proceed. I can now see the expected response. If you want your browser to fully trust a self-signed certificate, then I suggest you Google it, as there are too many browsers out there to show on this video. And furthermore, it doesn't actually matter. We don't actually care if the browsers don't trust the certificate because they're not the ones sending the message. With medical integrations, the sender didn't randomly find the receiver's address on the internet. They were given it directly from the receiver. Because of this, integration engines don't tend to mind that the certificate is self-signed and will allow it to be called. So let's try it out. We could send from an activity within another workflow, but for testing purposes, we'll create a sender in HL7 Soup and point it at our address. That's all I need, so I'll save it and try sending through a message. That looks like a correct response to me. And if I check, we'll see that the file has been created on the receiver containing the HL7 message I just sent. So that's it, SSL configured and working. It's now time for a quick disclaimer. All we have now is a secure connection between the computers. Just because you've done it doesn't mean that your data is 100% secure from hackers. We still recommend using a security expert to help. Also, it's worth noting that some certificate authorities give away free SSL certificates these days. Check the reviews first, but they can be a great way to simplify your configuration. If we've helped you, please give our video a like and consider subscribing to this channel for more tutorials. Thank you.